It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That is brand new stuff from A Pale Horse Named Death. The song is called Shallow Grave, and the album is called Lay Your Soul to Waste. And on the phone right now, we have the leader, the main guy, the guy that is A Pale Horse Named Death, the one and only Sal Abruscato from A Pale Horse Named Death. Sal, how are you doing, man?
Hey, how are you? How's it going? Thank you for having me.
Sure, man. Well, dude.
By the way, the title is Lay My Soul to Waste. Not yours, but mine.
Okay. There we go. Well, Sal, brand new record, sophomore release from you. And one thing that I read online, is that you were extremely proud of this record, probably more so than pretty much anything you've put your name on. Why don't we start there, man? What makes this one feel so good to you?
Just the progression of evolution as a songwriter now, and a vocalist, and as a band, as the entity of A Pale Horse Named Death. When we did the debut album, basically, me and Matt recorded it way before we were signed. We didn't have any real, big intentions. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were just really doing it for us. It was something that we wanted to do together because we just enjoyed working together, and he heard the songs, and he just really wanted to be involved. And we just started making the first record, and the evolution of the first record, the way the complete product was just really, we thought it was really good. And one thing led to another where, it was getting around, the music was getting around, and almost, what was it, about probably eight months later, SPV Records was interested in releasing it properly.
Okay. And
then, we just didn't, we didn't know it was going to go like that, especially these days, getting signed with a new band or a new project is very difficult. So when we did the second record, basically we had that kind of attitude, but when we did the second record, this was already now, after we've done all this foundation work, the first record came out, and we said, well, now this is the second actual real, we had no idea we would ever make a second record back then. This is the real deal. We need to go and progress to the next level and not end up like a lot of bands falling into that rut where the sophomore record kind of blows compared to the first record.
Sure.
And we gave it 110%. I was writing for 2 years for this record. I started writing for this record as soon as I was done with the first one.
Okay.
I just write. I'm prolific. So I'm always archiving and writing songs, and it was just all about doing the next level, harmony, songs, singing, production, mastering. We just wanted to just hit that next level and go in a positive direction, but contain and retain the sound and the attitude from the first record, and just be better at it.
Definitely. And the one thing that really stands out to me is something that you just pointed out, the songwriting on this. Not that it was bad on the first one, but there's a lot of, like lyrical interplay on these songs that's, developed a lot more. Like, it's definitely not rhymey as much as it is, very well thought out. It's like you're telling stories and you're completing, thoughts from point to point in each song. Is that kind of how you write, to actually tell stories?
Yeah, I kind of, like I've been telling everybody, these songs are kind of like a cinematic experience in my mind. I kind of see the whole story before I, complete lyrics. It's like I see the scenes, almost like scenes in a movie, and these scenes is what translates into the lyrics. So I see songs very visually, and I also visually hear what would happen orchestration wise, and that's kind of how it falls together for me. And a lot of times my lyrics start out as just a really bad story, like a bad depressing story, or a story about a bad situation, or that touches everybody in some real way. That's kind of my approach. I don't just sit there with a pen and paper and force it out and say, okay, I'm going to rhyme one word after another.
Sure.
I don't always necessarily believe in that, because sometimes forcing a rhyme doesn't really depict the story properly. So I like my fans to be able to put on headphones or listen to on a great stereo system in the dark, you know, having just sitting back, and they can literally see the song as it's playing in their mind, and they get it, you know, and then it becomes a cinematic experience for them as well in their head, based on whatever characters that they want to put into it or who they know and stuff. So it is a pretty accurate assumption there.
Okay.
And I also pushed myself. I wanted to, you know, of course, the first record I was writing those songs in 2009, and I always was one of those guys that was in the closet about, you know, singing, and, you know, everything gets better with time and experience, and me getting thrown out in the road a few times, singing every night, taught me a lot, and taught me how to, you know, get stronger and get more confident and sound more confident. By the time it was, you know, I was doing vocals back in the fall for this album, you know, all these harmonies, and I got very complicated at times. And I drove Matt sometimes crazy by doing so many vocal tracks of different stuff going on. And I just wanted to, you know, because I could understand people in the beginning and probably today saying, well, he's a drummer. What is he doing? You know, singing and playing guitar. I've had a few people say that to me. I've had a few friends say that to me.
Sure.
Like, you're a great drummer. Well, what are you doing? You know? But it was a quest that I had in me. It was a fire that was in me. I needed to see it out. And my attitude was, well, you know, if they don't like it, whatever. I'm doing it for myself. It's one of these things that was like on the bucket list. It was like another chapter in my life. I wanted to accomplish this at some point in my life. And now was the right time for me to do this. And it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of butterflies at times. But it made me even better by the time it was, you know, with the ideas to do the second record. And I just was endlessly prolific with harmonies and vocal ideas on this record. It was hard but easy at the same time for me. And, you know, just that's the way it came out.
Sure. Now, Sal, I got to ask, what is Matt's kind of role in the band? Because, I mean, I think because of your history, you know, with Typo and Life of Agony and whatnot, you are kind of the face of the band, and certainly you do the lion's share of the interviews and whatnot. Is Matt an equal, or is this your project that he assists with, or how does that dynamic work?
Me and Matt, when things started, you know, we approached this and made the record me and him. He believed in me, and he believed in the songs, and he was also, you know, equally inspired by it. And basically, when we developed this entity, we said, well, we're partners. It's not an ego trip where it's like, well, I do all the writing and I want all the fame, and you just do all the grunt work or anything like that. Matt gets inspired by my music, and when we're in production and we're recording, he then adds and comes up with ideas that he says, Sal, what if we do this here? You know, we get into like the nitty-gritty of production. He's an amazing engineer, super talented ears, can pick out any note anywhere. And he's a great vocal coach for me also. Okay. He has a lot of criticism, and it's good and bad, you know, and that's healthy. He'll tell me when flat out if something's not working out. And he'll make me sometimes, you know, it's good to have that objective opinion. And we went at this, me and him, and just gave it our all together. So he's basically, you know, he's my bro and my partner. And, you know, APHND is this formula that me and him do so well together because we have a real good chemistry. And he respects me as a writer. He's not really concerned about, oh, I need to write a song on my own or anything like that. He just says, you keep on writing and dump it on me, and we keep on recording, and I keep on doing what I do. And you know, he wrote the piano part in the middle of Dead of Winter, you know, all that cool stuff going on. And sometimes he comes up with such brilliant ideas because he's so inspired by the picture that I'm drawing for him that it becomes a beautiful moment.
Sure.
So I'm not against a great idea from him, and he's not any lesser than I am. And again, I'm not a singer because I got some kind of rock star ego. I've been done with that for probably 10, 12 years.
Sure.
I just love writing good music, and I like seeing it become as best as it could be, and I like the challenge of it, and so does he. So it's kind of, this is a mutual feeling that we both have, that we like to see it succeed, and we pretty much run the entity. He deals with a lot of aspects that nobody gets to see, you know, when it comes to dealing with the musicians in the band, making sure everybody learns the songs right, you know, because I'm busy focusing on getting the vocals right. So It's like he's got to, so it's a partnership.
Right, definitely. Now with the new record and really just the band in general, you guys have been compared, you know, pretty widely with Alice in Chains, which I don't know, personally I don't think that's a really fair comparison. I mean, I guess vocally maybe you've got sort of that thing going, but you do take a lot of comparisons to Alice in Chains. I'm curious if you feel like that's just, or if you know, I mean, for me personally, I hear more of your old band Type O in what you're doing now than an Alice in Chains. But certainly that can't hurt you either, to be compared to a band that is universally considered as great.
I've been hearing that from like the beginning,
right.
And the way I see it is, I've seen a lot of people compare us, of course, to Type O Negative, because at the end of the day, you know, those are my roots. I like the same stuff as Peter did. That's why we started the band, you know. And then to be also compared to Alice in Chains, well, you know, look, to be compared to both of these bands is the hugest compliment in the world to me, because I know I'm not copying anybody. I know I'm doing what I'm doing. It's just that people are finding a resemblance and a common thread of that dirty, down-tuned sound. And I think it's cool, you know. I think it's okay. Everyone's going to have their opinions. They're going to say, well, they sound like this, they sound like that, they sound like this, because nobody, you know, that's how it goes. It's a great compliment. I would, you know, as the years went on, I'm like, you know, I see people writing like it would be a great tour for us to open up or play on somewhere on a bill with Alice in Chains. Those guys are amazing. They've done a lot of amazing records from the early 90s on, and it's a huge compliment. It doesn't bother me in any way. If someone says they're ripping them off, that's different, which I know I'm not doing. But when people say it sounds, I know what they're talking about. They're talking about the bends, the down-tuned bending, and then I know I hit a lot of times the frequencies that Lane Staley would hit, just because that just happens to be a little bit like that's my natural register. I'm not one of these super high singers. I'm more of a baritone type of singer. But my mid-range is a very similar to the range that Lane Staley would hang around in when he would sing. So I could see, you know, why people say that. And that's okay. And that's cool because, again, to be compared to him is a great compliment.
Sure.
It flatters me.
Sure. Now, Sal, do you see the future of your band? Do you see Pale Horse Named Death being like a commercially, like a, you know, active rock type of a band, active rock radio type of a band, or do you see this band ultimately finding its place very similar to both of your other, you know, bigger projects like Type O or Life of Agony as like a popular underground type of a band?
It's kind of hard to answer because the unknown, you know, we don't know what's going to transpire, you know, in the future. I don't think we're going to be a household staple for the reason that, you know, a lot of the, I guess, you know, God-fearing folk out there might find offense to such a pessimistic, dark, nihilist, depressing record, you know,
right.
That preaches, you know, I actually preach, you know, my records tend to lean not visually, but in lyrical content and suggestions more to the dark side of things anyway. So, you know, I don't know if it would be a household name. If it was, I really would find that quite amusing, and it would give you a good idea of the state of our world, because I do feel that in a way, this type of vibe is kind of in tune with all the global and issues, problems we have as a human race. So I think there'll be a lot of people that will find a commonality with it, saying, wow, things are pretty miserable right now between wars, economy, all the things that are going on that you see on the stupid TV,
Right.
There's so much bad shit. There's just so much bad shit happening right now, and we're slowly or maybe quickly just, assuring that, our demise and end will come. We will go extinct somehow, some way. We'll do it to ourselves.
Right.
It just won't happen naturally like it did for the dinosaurs. We'll do it to ourselves.
Sure.
But I would be happy with just being, just equally as well known as my, previous bands. I'd be happy being, hey, look at bands like Slayer. They never relied on being a household name or a commercial entity, but they have such a huge cult following that their longevity it'll never die. They'll never die. Those guys will be playing till they're 70.
Right. Definitely.
So I would rather be that. I'd rather be, with the hardcore, diehard fans that will just buy record after record and keep us going. Because that's the name of the game: is can we keep going to be able to continue writing records? So I'd like to get that success to be able to do that. But dude, whatever happens, happens. I don't know. It's a crazy world. Anything goes. I mean, half the shit that's popular right now is ridiculously horrible anyway. So I don't know.
Right. Definitely. Now, Sal, I got to ask you about your, I don't know if he's your ex-bandmate or your on hiatus bandmate or whatever, but I got to ask you about Keith Caputo. And I'm not going to ask you to offer an opinion about the whole sex change thing that he's doing, but I'm curious. I'm curious more or less, as somebody that toured the world with him for years and years. Is what he's doing now kind of what you saw for all those years, or has he changed as a guy? Or outside looking in, and as somebody that has interviewed all of you guys as Life of Agony, seems like he took a dramatic turn somewhere, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying it seems like he just veered a different direction. Is that what you saw as somebody that knew him for all those years?
He was battling this whole thing within himself probably for like 20 years. He always felt different. He always felt more like more of a feminine than masculine, I guess. And I guess as the years went on, this bottled up stuff that was in him was torturing him. And because he couldn't be himself. So ultimately he decided to just make himself happy first. And I guess that's what it took. It was him being, living as a woman was what was going to make him happy, and great.
Sure.
I wish him the best. I mean, honestly, since our last show, which was our last show in 2011 in the summer, I haven't spoken to him, haven't heard from him. He basically, to become who he became, he disconnected himself from anybody from the old.
Okay.
So, Life of Agony, that was Life of Agony's last show. We disbanded, we separated, we moved out of our studio, and
right.
I feel that each decision was part of the reason why we disbanded, but not completely all of it. The band was going to disband anyway because we just couldn't work together, couldn't write a record, it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't going to happen, and that was one of the catalysts that also I saw the writing on the wall. I was like, it's about time I do what I want to do.
Sure.
This is bunch of baloney that I'm, on the sidelines waiting for people to get along or me and just get on the same page about music. And that's why I do everything the way I do now with my records, writing the vision almost 99% entirely, because I also realize a lot of times this collaborative stuff with writing a song, and everybody in the band's got to get their say and then put their 2 cents in to get their part in the song. It doesn't always work out. It just ends up being a song of just a bunch of parts, a bunch of riffs, and no, it's not a complete. It doesn't feel complete. It doesn't, I feel a song needs to come entirely pretty much from one source, so it really depicts the vision and the movements of music and stuff. So, yeah, I wish him the best.
Sure.
It is very strange to any kind of images I've seen now and then of him as a woman kind of throws me off a little bit because I know him as Keith.
Right.
And, it's just, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Life goes on and people have to sometimes go down a different fork on the road and just make their own way. And sometimes that requires separating and not having them in your life anymore.
Right. No, I understand.
And I just wish him the best. I hope he's safe. And, those were the old days, and we all needed to move on. He moved on. Alan moved on. I moved on. So.
Sure, definitely. Well, you've moved on with the new record, Lay My Soul to Waste. What are the tour plans for the upcoming future, I guess?
Well, we're in the midst of negotiating with new agents. We've been firing people and stuff, so because there's a lot of good things are happening with this record, so the pressure is building. So we're definitely working on stuff. We're just talking to agents, and then we'll get the ball rolling. It's a very complicated process with us because it's not like we can just jump and go because we have guys that are in other bands, like Johnny Kelly's in Danzig, so he's got quite of a hectic schedule with Danzig as well. So we try to work around everybody and compromise.
Right.
I really don't want to go and replace people to go do a tour and stuff like that. So it's a little complicated with organizing the time frame, but we're planning that things should kick off in September. We might do some one-off stuff in end of July and get the ball rolling. And stuff like that.
Cool. Well, the new album, as we said, is called Lay My Soul to Waste. Sal, where can people go online to find out more about the band and buy the record and all that good stuff?
You can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/APHND, or you can just go to apalehorsenamedeath.com, and everything is there, Twitter feeds, band members pop in now and then, and we have like a whole forum, and basically it's a complete social site, so people find it quite entertaining and a lot of content. So, yeah, and we're on Twitter, APHND, so we're on all that social stuff.
Right. Awesome. Well, all right, Sal. Well, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track. Why don't you pick something from the new record and tell us a quick story about it to end the interview?
Well, I'm going to throw you for a left turn, and I'm going to say Day of the Storm, which is one of the slowest songs on the record.
All right.
That song was actually written first during, I started writing that song in the middle of Hurricane Irene, a year and a half ago, and that's what created the vibe of the song. At the same time, I did my vocals during Hurricane Sandy, so this song is very in tune with global, apocalyptic, the end of mankind.
Sure.
So, that'll throw everybody for a loop.
All right, well, let's slow it down and check it out right now. This is Day of the Storm. It is A Pale Horse Named Death right here on your Classic Metal Show.